It's now time for the Wedcast, brought to you by Film Media Wedding Videography, 3-time Wedding Industry Award regional finalist. Here is your host, James. Hello guys, and welcome to the Wedcast episode 2. My name is James, your host, and we are back here again for another fantastic wedding supplier interview. So today on the show, I will be talking to DJ Paul Allen. Well, should I say National Wedding Industry Award winner DJ Paul Allen. He'll be coming on today, and I'll be talking to him about various things that he does to make obviously your wedding more special in the evening with your music and all the other various things that goes on behind the scenes to give you that best possible reception feeling for when your guests arrive, and not just your reception but throughout the day, because Paul does other bits too. So we'll be talking to him about that. Also have Leo back here again this week with a question, and I think it's a pretty funny one that Leo's going to ask him this week, so stay tuned for that. That'll be towards the end of the show. So without further ado, I will get Paul on and let's have a chat with him, see what he's going to do and see what he's going to say. So here we go. Hi Paul, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you very much, James.
Thank you for coming on. So one of the reasons I brought you on is I wanted to talk to you about, obviously you're a DJ at a wedding, but you do more than just DJ. As I said, you do some hosting as well throughout the day, so I want to hear all about that. So first of all, start by telling me, Paul, how long have you been into doing what you do as a DJ? Or should I say an award-winning DJ?
I've been in the industry longer than I care to remember.
Oh, really?
I've been in entertainment just over 40 years. I've been DJing coming up to 39 years. And my background, I originally started in clubs, and I moved into weddings actually 10 years ago. So it hasn't been that long, but prior to that, I've got a huge experience in corporate events and functions and what have you. So, 40-ish years, but weddings as such, actually a decade, and that's all.
So what made you want to get into weddings then? Did you just try one once and just kind of get the bug for it, or did you?
Well, what it was I went out and did an event in Ascot with a band. And the band were obviously the main focus, and I was just really there to fill in the gaps around the band. And we went down to Ascot, and it was a really high-end event for a computer firm. And I just went in and did what I would normally do, a little old guy from Great Yarmouth, and they did a silent auction, right, where there was a lot of money changing hands. These were, holidays on the plains in Africa, and we're talking a lot of money. And I just went in and did what I did. And at the end of the event, one of the organisers came up and said, "Oh my gosh, out of all the DJs that we've ever used in events, you by far have been the best." And we didn't have to tell you anything. You just instinctively knew. And that connected with one or two events that I did with the band. I thought, well, yeah, maybe I should start going into more events and corporate stuff rather than just working in venues. And that was how I got into almost like mobile work. I always found I'd never do it because I was too lazy.
Oh, really?
And that drove me to actually go into that side of the business, and obviously weddings.
So, like in regards to weddings and stuff, I mean, I should imagine it's probably a totally different ball game to it's definitely a different ball game to corporate stuff in some respects. And I should imagine with weddings as well, like myself, because obviously we've worked together a few times now, well, actually quite a lot of times. But even, I've only been in the wedding industry now for 7 years. I started in 2015. And within that, obviously, 7-year time, you notice trends, especially when it comes to things like, the way that the brides are dressed and various other parts of the day. Have you noticed kind of trends with the way people look at a DJ and a host on a wedding day? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, things have changed a lot. We are now in an industry which is far more customer focused and customer service orientated than it has ever been. Yeah. So the DJ as such has to be far more service orientated, I suppose, is the best way to sort of say it. Once upon a time, 30 years ago, a DJ would turn up at a wedding. You would get what you would get, 4 or 5 hours worth of entertainment. The DJ would do what he did, and you'd have very little input in it. There's stories of people having first dances, and they had to have the track that the DJ had because it was all on vinyl, and he didn't have what they wanted, and it was very, very different. But obviously now, with the advent of digital technology and the way that we are as a society, people are far more specific in what they want. They want to have more of a hand in how their wedding is going to be. So they want, not more control, but certainly have, a bigger input. And the way that a DJ has evolved is that we have to be very aware of that. So we are very much more customer orientated. We have to spend a great more time with people going through what they want and what they don't want. The days of a DJ turning up and just playing music have not gone, but they've certainly declined significantly.
Because I can obviously, as I said, we've done some weddings together, and I've even come to you before to one of, I've been to a couple of your customer meetings with you before, because obviously we've tried to combine it where we both go and see the customer beforehand, and you've been there and you've talked, through the day how you do things, and you've given the customer chances to kind of not select necessarily all the songs and stuff they want, but to kind of get an idea and a feel for what particular music they like. Is that the sort of thing you would do normally, or is that?
Well, that's what I do. I mean, it's not the easiest of things to explain how you work, but the best way to describe it is a car.
Okay.
There are people that will quite happily buy a car for 500 quid. They'll run it for a year and then scrap it. There are people that will go out and buy a Bentley at 60, 70, 80, however much a Bentley is, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. They are still cars, and they will get you from A to B, but they get you from A to B in a different level of luxury, shall we say, or a different level of service. Yeah. And that's the same with DJs. There are still DJs out there who will just turn up to 4 or 5 hours worth of music, and they will play what they will play, and you have very little input. The way that I've steered my business, and there are 1 or 2 of us doing it, but not necessarily that many, where we want to basically get into the heads of the couples and want to get inside their brain and try and look at it through their eyes and tailor everything very much to how they want it to be. And it's great because it's a challenge. Every night I work is different because I'm working with different music, and it keeps me on my toes. I'm certainly not playing the same music in the same order every night because everyone's choices are different. So it makes it fun for me, but it also makes it very personal to couples. And after all, weddings are all about memories, and it's creating those moments that they will look back on in 5, 10, 15 years' time and remember them and smile. And that's the way I approach it, which is a little bit more in depth because of my background in entertainment and the fact that I've managed venues and I've project managed and event managed. It's very much like wedding planning. I'm not a wedding planner, but that angle comes into the DJing side.
Absolutely.
I'm hoping that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. I mean, just following on from that. So obviously, you say that you're not playing the same set list every night, which I think is absolutely brilliant because, as you said, there's more choice than ever now, especially in music. Obviously, you've got your Spotify at home and iTunes and stuff. You must have an extensive music library. I mean, how often how do you do that? Are you buying it on iTunes and digitally playing it, or how does that work?
Well, I always make sure I've got stuff and it's all loaded up. I personally won't download stuff live when I'm working, and because it's not that secure when you're in parts of Norfolk and Suffolk where the internet is appalling, and it's a dangerous game to play to record. It's getting easier because obviously the internet is improving week on week, but I will go through and spend a lot of time with people ahead of time, and we'll talk about what we're going to play, what we're not going to play, and some people are very specific, and they will want specific tracks. I'm happy to take as few or as many requests from couples as they wish. We create a must playlist. They can have 4 or 5 on the list. They can have the entire night. And again, we create a Don't You Dare playlist. It gives them more chance to obviously steer what they're going to do. to how they want it to be, but also the job is to bring in a word of caution, particularly after the events of 2020. That we have to look at how people behave at weddings. We have to look at our older guests. So there's a lot of things that you sort of bring into the discussion to make people aware of when you're steering music, if that makes sense, so that you keep everyone happy, or as happy as can be.
Well, I mean that must be pretty difficult. As you said, there's people in the room of different age ranges. Obviously, you've got children sometimes. Well, especially at weddings, you've got a lot of children, elderly people as well, and you know, you don't want to offend anyone. So it's about finding that right balance, I should imagine.
Yeah, it is, and it's also a very hard balance because this conversation comes up frequently. Who do you keep happy as a DJ?
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you keep the room happy and upset a bride and groom, or do you keep the bride and groom happy and play not necessarily what the rest of the room want? Ultimately, the bride and groom are the people that need to be kept happy because they're the people paying the bill.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a very, very, very fine tightrope to walk, particularly as music gets wider and the access to music gets wider. It is a tightrope walk. And you have to try and keep on that tightrope. Occasionally you'll fall off, and there's a lot of things that can cause that. But ultimately, you have to try and walk the line and stay up there.
Oh, do you know what? I mean, that sounds, yeah. I don't envy you on that part of things because it must be difficult. It must be difficult, Paul. So. Okay, right. So we're going to just pretend now that I'm going to book a wedding, right? Okay, so I've booked my wedding. I've got the venue. I've got obviously everything else. I want a DJ. Why should I book you, Paul? Tell me what you can bring to my day. I want you for the evening, and I want a fantastic playlist. Why should I book you?
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this round.
Right, go on then.
And now normally, if it's a bride and groom, I would be aiming this part of the conversation to the bride.
Right, go on then.
But having said that, you know, obviously groom and groom, bride and bride. Yep. But I will normally be talking to the ladies. So I'm going to aim this at you now, James. For your wedding day, what is the most important thing for your party in the evening? For you,
my party in the evening, or did you say the party in the evening?
Yeah, for your party in the evening. I'm putting you on the spot, and okay. I'm going to make you feel uncomfortable, and there is a reason. And again, bear in mind that if it's a bride and groom, I would be aiming this towards the bride.
Okay.
So for you, what would be the most important thing for your evening party?
I want everyone to have a brilliant, memorable time.
Okay. Do you dance yourself? Do you get on the dance floor, or do you need encouragement?
To be honest with you, no, I'll just go straight up there and have a dance, to be honest. I'm one of them sort of people who are a little bit shy to start with, but when the evening gets going, and that was actually going to ask one of my next questions, how do you deal with people who don't want to get up and dance? I mean, I know you're answering this one at the moment, but it's kind of related in a way.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that hopefully in sort of two parts.
Yeah.
The reason I ask a bride, particularly, if she will like dancing or she likes to dance, is because generally, and again, with same-sex marriages, it's different, but with obviously a bride and a groom at a wedding, the bride, wherever she will be, people will actually gravitate towards her.
That is very true, yeah.
And wherever she is, people will want to know and keep an eye on her. If it's a same-sex wedding, then they will gravitate towards the couple.
Exactly.
But if the couple or the bride is in the bar doing shots all night, the party will be in the bar.
Yeah.
And that's, if you look at weddings that you go to and weddings that you've even been to, you'll notice that this applies throughout the day. People will gravitate towards. So from a DJ's point of view, if I can keep the couple or the bride in the main vicinity of the dance floor, then people will be on the floor with them and having a good time. It is awkward. And again, post-2020, it's harder because people don't go to a wedding to dance. They go to celebrate.
Exactly.
We go to a nightclub to dance. We go to a festival to dance.
Yeah.
We go to a wedding to celebrate with a couple.
Yeah.
And in modern society, for people to dance, they have to be in the dark. they have to be hidden within a crowd, and they have to have one or two drinks, shall we say.
Yeah.
That's generally where people are the most comfortable. So on a dance floor at 8 o'clock at night, when it's bright sunshine and people are pretty sober, it's actually an alien environment for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So there isn't. It's been in discussion, particularly from America over the last since 2020, that what we can't do as DJs is overpromise. The DJ saying, "I will guarantee you'll have a ram floor. I will guarantee that you will have a packed floor."
Because you can't guarantee that.
You can't.
No.
Not post 2020. Up until post 2020, it was easier, but we can't do it now.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is the way that I work is I try and grab as much information from people I can, try and get into their heads and try and understand how they want it to be, and they understand them and their guests, because they know the guests. I don't. Not until the night. And you try and arm you with as much information ahead of the party, so that we try most to have as much information so that we can try and hit the ground running.
Yeah.
Ultimately, a DJ is only as good as the person in front of them.
Exactly.
And that's what it boils down to. If people don't want to dance, they will not dance. We can try lots of tricks to try and keep them dancing, but ultimately, if they don't want to dance, they won't dance.
Well, to be honest with you, Paul, I said I've worked with you numerous times, and to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever seen an empty dance floor. So you must be doing something right there. So yeah, that's brilliant.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not perfect by a long stretch, but I want the weddings to be as best as I can possibly make them. I want them to be perfect for the couple. So, as I say, this is partly the way that I work, and there are one or two of us that do it this way. And I want to spend the time, and I want to talk to them and get that information so that we can hit the ground running as best we can. Because the more information you got, the better chance you have.
Yeah. I mean, just quickly going back to what you said about people not wanting to dance until they've had a drink in them. I kind of, in a way, I can definitely relate to that, because one of the parts of what I do in regards to filming, I offer a service where I do guest messages, and there's no one going to come and talk to me without a drink in them. And it's similar, and it's about finding that line. And I always sort of say to my couples as well, just like you said a minute ago, I can't guarantee how many people I'm going to get. It's down to the day, and sometimes you go in it blind, and you have a day where literally it can be a day where you can't stop people, for example, leaving me a video message. And it'd probably be the same for you, where literally they're on the dance floor from as soon as you start that music. And other times you find, and you're like, you can see a few bits of tumbleweed going by, and that's just the way it is. And then you never know what you're going to get at a wedding. And that's one of the reasons I love it, because it keeps a variety. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you literally, you're only as good as your last wedding, and every wedding is a new day, and you literally justify your existence on every single party.
Exactly.
So it is fun and and nerve-wracking, I suppose, in equal amounts. Because yes, you can hit the ground running. You can play the first track, and the floor is full all night. Fantastic.
Yeah.
But likewise, and again, there are many issues that come into play.
Yeah.
And again, this all comes into the more complex nature of what DJs have to do now.
Right.
Because we have, for example, casino tables, and I just purely use that because it's the easiest one to use.
Yeah.
Is a casino table will draw people away from the dance floor.
Yeah.
And they generally operate until 10:30, 11 o'clock. That's perfect, that's fine. But it's something else for the guests to do.
Yeah.
So as well as socialising, as well as going outside and having a cigarette, because people still do, going to the bar to get a drink, there's also casino tables. There's also, you know yourself, the sparkle shot, which is very much in vogue at this moment in time.
It takes everyone out.
But from our point of view, you start a night going, you get everything going, the party's going, and 8:25, the wedding planner will come up and go, "Can you just ask people to go outside and do a sparkle shot?"
Like, no.
And that's fine, but suddenly everything grinds to a halt.
Oh, yeah. It must be
And
frustrating.
all the people walk outside. They're outside for 20 minutes, and then they come back in. And often the buffet is about. And then the buffet, you sort of get it going, and then you have to start again. So there's a lot of, from a DJ's point of view, there's a lot of things. And it's just part of what is the event now. There are so many things that are included within a wedding now that couples that want and what they want to have and to include, that it makes it fun, it makes it a challenge, it makes it exciting. But what we do has changed enormously.
Absolutely. I mean,
and the way we approach it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you mentioned, kind of like you do face different challenges, and one of them I was actually going to talk to you about is there's various venues as well, and we're not going to mention any venues' names. Various venues where they have sound limiters now. How does that mean? How does that impact you?
That's an interesting topic, and it's a hot topic with most DJs.
Yeah.
It's in some respects, it's upsetting because there are certain venues that don't tell couples that they've got sound limiters.
Yeah.
And it's not part of their remit to advise couples.
No.
And of course, it very much depends on the venue. It depends on how it is installed. And I'm not going to get too involved.
No. We'll just touch on it. I mean, because it can be a challenge, obviously, like not just for yourself, but like for bands as well, I should imagine.
Oh yeah, very much more so for bands.
Yeah,
more so for bands, because a drummer is, if somebody's using a proper drum kit rather than a digital drum kit, major problems with the band because it's the drum that's the issue.
Yeah.
So yes, it makes it harder, and it's something we have to live with.
Yeah.
I mean, noise limiters have been around. I remember working in the West End at the end of the 80s, and I worked in the Empire in Leicester Square, which is a discotheque as it was, and we were one of the first venues to have limiters in the West End.
Wow.
And that was 1988.
So they've been a while.
So they've been around a long while,
yeah.
but they've started to gain ground recently because of obviously noise at work and regulations and the way that we are with noise. But it's very hard if people aren't aware of it. I must confess, if I'm working a venue and there is a limiter, I will tell couples, because it's not in my interest not to tell them.
Yeah.
And I will say to them, you are aware that there is a limiter in the venue, and I don't have ultimate control over how loud things are.
That's down to the venue.
So because it's very, and I always use this analogy. If you ever went to an Oasis concert back in the day, would it be the same concert if it was an eighth of the volume that it was?
No, absolutely.
When you went,
absolutely.
It would be a very different concert. It'd still be a very enjoyable concert, but it'd be a very different concert. And I use Oasis because they were on record for having one of the loudest volumes ever recorded at a concert.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I think it went well over 100 dB, over, which was quite an obscene level at the time, and to a point of being dangerous. But it's hard, but it's something we have to live with. But it is something that couples need to consider when they're planning their party. If possible, it really ought to be part of the discussion or the questions that they ask a venue.
Yeah.
And if they're happy, fantastic. But if they are looking for a nightclub level of sound at their wedding, or loud sound, if you've got a noise limiter in, you may not get it. So that's a question they should be asking.
I mean, that is worth noting. Obviously, anyone listening to this who is planning, obviously booking a DJ like yourself, Paul, or a band, as well as we mentioned before, that's the question you should definitely ask your venue. Let's quickly move on now, because I want to talk to you about first dances. So the other thing that I quite like when we've worked together before, you've kind of, it doesn't happen at every wedding, but you sometimes have a father and daughter dance and mother-daughter dance.
There's several places where a father and daughter dance can be done. Traditionally, it was a little bit later in the evening. The floor would be cleared, a big announcement would be made, and father and daughter would dance in front of everyone. And it can be quite daunting. Often is the case that dads are not too comfortable dancing in front of people, and even brides, and it can be a little bit scary.
Absolutely.
That's how it used to be back in the day. And in the States, there's still a huge amount of the big announcement, the big fanfare, and it's very much under a spotlight.
Yeah.
It's it's a fine line. It's a day where a bride is under the spotlight, but she doesn't want to be under the spotlight in a lot of respects. So it's a balance. The second place that it can be done is after the first dance is to play like a family dance where everyone is on the floor and the bride will just grab her dad and she can have a moment with him in the crowd.
I think that's
Photographers, videographers are on hand. They can get the shot because they're there and they're close. And it's about recording those moments and the memories.
Yeah.
And she can just have a moment with no pressure and no stress. The third option is to turn it on its head. And when I discuss this with couples, I leave this until the very end because it is turning on its head. We go back hundreds of years to how it used to be when a father gave her bride away and the dance was before the first dance.
Yeah.
And that's how it used to be. Basically, it's symbolic. It's the transfer of his daughter's hand across to her husband.
Yeah.
So the way that I do it, and again, there are several of us doing it like this, and we all do it slightly differently, our interpretation and our spin on it. But basically, what I do is I set it up beforehand and say to the guests, we're going to do it a little bit different. We're going to go back in time. We're going to go back, and this is going to be symbolic. This is going to be the transfer of dad, his daughter's hand from father to her now new husband. We're going to have the father and daughter dance, and at the end of it, I'm not going to say anything. Her now husband is going to step in. He's going to take her hand, and they are going to dance off on their first dance, and dad is going to step away. It can be really emotional.
Yeah.
It can be comedic because I always say to couples, don't overthink it. Don't think what is going to happen at the end of the father and daughter dance, because dad certainly won't. He will do what he will do. So you'll get to the end of the dance, husband will step in, take his wife's hand, and dad may be in tears. He might grab her husband and take him off around the dance floor and leave the bride looking on. That's happened several times.
Yeah, you never know.
And it depends on the relationship that the groom has with his father-in-law.
Yeah.
So again, it can be very, very different, but it can be really emotional because it's symbolic. And often it's the case when you say this at the end of the three options that brides will go for it because of the fact that it is something that can be so emotional.
I mean, it's funny because that is one of the questions when I'm doing my meetings with couples. I often ask them, "Will there be a father and daughter dance?" And I usually get, "Oh, I'm not sure whether or not he'll want to do that." And as you just said, it's about kind of when obviously for yourself when you give them that option, then you tell them they actually think, "Oh, actually that would be quite nice. That's a nice thing to do." And it's not something that necessarily brides, and especially brides, obviously because it's a father-daughter dance, would necessarily think about. So yeah, that's fantastic.
Well, again, that's just the way that I work, and I stress again, it's not just me. There are others like me that do it like this. I look at it a different way, as I say, because of obviously my background, but also I've been trained. The same as certain other people. We went on the same training courses. We had the same mentors. We've spent a lot of time sitting in rooms learning from people that are at the very top of the profession that have been influenced by the American market and the way that they do things. And obviously, we've adapted how we work off the back of the teachings that we've had. So basically, my job is to give a couple ideas. And to give them lots of options. Some they'll run with and some they won't. And then it allows them to create their own blueprint of their evening. Yeah. And they can just relax and enjoy the night knowing how it's going to be. And there's no worry about should they be here, should they be doing this, because it's my job to make sure that they're where they need to be and at the time that they're meant to be there, and the fact that we've discussed how it's going to happen all ahead of time.
And obviously, you mentioned there obviously how America influences the way you kind of do things, and it influences really the whole of the wedding industry in the UK. I mean, people see things. We now live in a world with the TikTok, and
Yeah.
you've got YouTube, and people see ideas, and there's always these trends. So my question I was going to ask you is, some of the things that I kind of see DJs do, and well, especially yourself, is I quite like the fun and games you bring, not just in the evening part. Like, so obviously you do Mr. and Mrs., which is absolutely hilarious. That can be really good, especially when everyone's had a few drinks, everyone gets around that dance floor, and then you get that bride and groom back to back with is it like a paddle in the air, or is it a shoe that they do?
Yeah, it's again, it's an Americanism. It's done as a tool, in all honesty, and I say this to couples. Again, everyone is different, but I explain why I do it and what it's there for, and I give couples the option that they can decide on the night. It's their call. There's no pressure. If they don't want to do it on the night, we don't do it. But it's the way that I use it. It's like a tool to be used after the buffet. If you have an evening buffet, sometimes the energy will drop in the room.
Yeah.
And that's down to various factors, but I won't go into them because we will be here for hours talking. But it's there as a tool, because what I do is I get everyone back around the dance floor.
Yeah.
We put 2 chairs on the dance floor back to back, and I ask a series of questions to the couple that will take about 5 minutes, that's all. And the idea is that they answer the questions and you should match. The game in America is known as the wedding shoe game. So if you go on YouTube, it's known as the wedding shoe game. In the UK, we know it as Mr. and Mrs. as the TV program.
Yeah.
And the bit we do is where they have the pink and the blue paddle in the boxes and they answer the questions. The American version is that you use shoes. So the couple will take the shoes off and they will switch. The American market likes the sort of the chaos of people sitting there trying to undo shoelaces under pressure,
yeah.
And it's just carnage, and that's what they like. So and it's a different spin. I've had couples that have had bands personalised, so they have their own shoes designed for the purpose. I've had couples that use their own toys. So, for example, the guy was a tree surgeon, so he had a plastic chainsaw.
Right. Oh my God.
So you can adapt it, but ultimately the pink and the blue paddle live in my van. They never leave it, and they are there. And again, it's a little bit politically incorrect. It's blue for boys, pink for girls.
Yeah.
And obviously, if it's the same-sex marriage, we will adapt it.
That's great.
And we ask a series of questions, and I get the guests involved. The guests are encouraged to cheer and clap if they get the answers right, but likewise, if they get the answers wrong, it's a little bit of panto, it's a little bit of theatre, and they sort of do like the villain at the panto. And it brings the guest into the celebration. Any guests that don't necessarily know them as a couple will then see them together, because if they're work colleagues, they may only know one of them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it brings them into how they interact as a couple.
Yeah.
And people don't get the questions right, and it might be that the bride will swing around and give husband that look, and that, you're in trouble now. You didn't do this, and that photo is gold.
Yeah.
Because somebody will capture it.
That's brilliant.
And it's worth its weight in gold. That memory of her giving him the look, and likewise, I've had grooms to brides.
Yeah.
And so, but what then happens is, the end of it, after 5 minutes, I whip the chairs away and go, right, bride and groom, on the floor, let's go, bang. And it's used at the end of the buffet. It brings people back to the dance floor. It is really hard for an entire room to walk away from the dance floor when they're standing on it. So what it does is it relaunches at the end of the food. When you've had that lull, it's got people back on the floor, and it's really hard for everyone to go and sit down again. So it gives you like a block to push against, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Total sense. And
so you don't have to do it. You can, there's various other things you can do, but that's partly why I do it in the evening. It can be done during the reception.
I think
you just turn the chairs on the top table and do it between courses.
I think it's great. I think it's a really nice way as well. As you said, bring people back on there, and it's fun, and it gets people laughing and people talking. I think that's great.
Yeah, well, it works really well. I mean, it is very simple. Again, there aren't many of us doing it, but it's fun, and it just adds something different to the day. And I'll often get feedback off people. They go, "Oh, we love that Mr. and Mrs. thing," and you think, well, it was only 5 minutes out of the entire night, but it's the one thing that they remember.
That's the one thing they remember. That's great. I mean, I have seen you do various other things at weddings. Like, we have to go into all of them now, but I've seen you use dry ice on the dance floor, which is another really nice one.
I mean, again, what we offer as DJs now is far more than we would have done 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Dry ice has a nice effect. It's called walking on clouds or floating on clouds, whatever you want to call it. And it's theatrical. It is using dry ice like you would use in a theatre, or I always say to people, as you would have seen on The X Factor, where the acts walk out and it's the smoke that's on the floor. It isn't smoke; it's dry ice, and it looks lovely. It looks amazing on first dance shots. It also hides a multitude of sins if people have got two left feet, because their feet disappear into the clouds.
Right. So just quickly going back to other things that you do. So obviously you do DJing. So talk to me a little bit about hosting the day. What do you do?
Ultimately, the way that I work is I'm there to hold a hand and for somebody that will look out for a couple and make sure they're okay, and also give them time. I've seen this happen too many. For example, the first dance in the evening, where somebody will somebody will introduce it other than the DJ, and it's almost like a couple are thrown into it. And with speeches, they're thrown into it, and I've known grooms that are like, we weren't ready. I want to go to the loo. I'm not ready. I didn't know it was coming.
Yeah.
So it's having somebody who can say to you ahead of time, right, we're 10 minutes away, we're 15 minutes away. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Do you need time? Particularly with the first dance, somebody may need it. Somebody may need to adjourn to the bar for a couple of drinks to to steady nerves.
Absolutely.
And from a bride's point of view, check hair, check makeup, go to the loo in a wedding dress. It's not a 2-minute job. There may be an army of helpers required.
Exactly.
So this is all something that takes time, and people need to have that time to prepare. So again, that's all part of what I do and the way that host stroke DJ would help, rather than just being there, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to move on now. So obviously you're a national winner at the Wedding Industry Awards in 2020, and in 2019 was it? You were highly commended as well. So congratulations on that. I mean, how did that come about? Did you have lots of people vote for you, or did you get nominated? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, this was the Wedding Industry Awards. There are many award ceremonies out there, and it was. I was, to be honest, absolutely gobsmacked that I won it. And I was nominated by one of my couples.
Yeah.
And then basically we have to email the couples from the previous year.
Yeah.
And say, well, I've been entered in the awards. Would you mind completing some questionnaires and questions, which I don't even know what they are. We didn't see them ahead of time.
No.
And obviously couples very kindly went and answered the questions, wrote the reviews, did what they needed to do, and I was delighted and amazed that I won. I didn't think for 1 minute that I would. Again, I'm from Great Yarmouth. Never thought that anyone from Great Yarmouth would win the national awards.
Wow.
So absolutely delighted. And it's heartwarming because you put everything into it, and for me, I worry, and I still worry that I want everything to be perfect. There is anxiety ahead of doing weddings because I want it to be as best as it can be. And it's heartwarming that people have taken the time to do that. Eat into their day and vote. So I'm super appreciative of it.
Absolutely. So what I'm going to do now, Paul, is I'm going to hand you over to Leo, my son. He's got a question he wants to ask you. He's going to ask you this question now, and then when he's asked you that, we'll come back and you can tell us all about the best place to find you to book you. But we'll just hear from Leo first, and we'll go from there.
How many times have you been requested to play Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley?
Hi, Leo. Thank you very much for the question. Truthfully, not many. I think the way that weddings have moved now is that the people that are getting married are generally now in their 20s. Not. Don't get me wrong, not everyone, but on the whole, the majority of couples that are getting married are in their 20s and 30s. And you've got to remember that Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up, was a long while ago.
A long while ago.
And it's music that they may not necessarily know. Again, it's down to how music has changed. I get asked not to play ABBA by an awful lot of brides now because they don't know the track. They're in their 20s. ABBA was in their 70s. It's a long while ago. So music has changed, and what is played at weddings has changed. So in answer to your question, in short, not much.
I think that's a very specific question there, Leo, and I think what he's thinking there, Paul, is he's going along the lines of there's as I said earlier, TikTok. There's trends. There's something called Rick Rolled. I don't know if you've heard of that. Yeah. It's where videos are played.
Yeah.
So I think he's probably seen it on there. That's probably why I asked you. But thank you, Leo, for that question. I'm sure Paul's never been asked that question before, so thank you.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you. I mean, yes, TikTok does play a huge influence with the younger guests. So yes. I mean, the Wednesday dance is the thing at the moment, isn't it?
That is a huge thing at the moment. And I suppose you get asked to play that, do you, at the moment?
Yes.
So, Paul, tell me how I can book you. How can I find you online? Where are you online? Do you have a website? Are you on Facebook and Insta and everything like that?
Yeah, well, I'm all over the place. I always say to people the best way to find it is just put into Google Paul Allen DJ. You'll find me.
Yeah, and so type in Google. You've got a website, you say. So so on the website.
Yeah, there's website, there's Insta, there's Vimeo, YouTube. And obviously, I'm on as many platforms as I can be.
Yeah.
But yeah, literally, if you just put in the search engine and put the name and put DJ after it, it should be there. And obviously, again, it's part of the world that we live in. We have to have an online presence. And you know, the days of looking in the yellow pages have gone. So all you really need to do is put the name into a search engine, and you should find me.
What are you like on social media? I mean, for me, I try when I'm at a wedding, I try and do like a little couple of screenshots. I mean, one I do is I specifically do like the first dance. So I take a picture of my camera filming the first dance. Yeah. Is there something that you do to keep the online presence? Like
I try and do as much as I can. Obviously, it gets harder as you get older because obviously things change and things change very, very quickly.
They do.
But yeah, I try and do as much as I can. But obviously, I am also very aware of the fact that not every couple want their days to be on social media. 90% do, 99% do.
Absolutely.
But there is still a percentage of people that want them to be social media free, and that they don't want their day to be splashed all over social media on the day. So if I'm not sure, I won't post anything until I've had that conversation with the couple.
That's the same with me. I usually check. And I think that's the way you have to be these days, just to make sure that everyone's happy and comfortable. And obviously, you don't want to offend anyone. So yeah, that's great. So Paul, thank you ever so much for being the second guest on the Wedcast, and it's been an absolute pleasure and joy. You and me could sit and talk for hours. We could put the worlds to rights, and I'm sure we will do again at some point soon. So thank you ever so much for coming on, and obviously thank you to Leo for asking that awesome Rick Astley question to you. So hopefully I'll be seeing you in shortly as the wedding season gets started this year at some weddings, and look forward to it.
Yep, I'm sure we will. Thank you very much for your time. Cheers, James.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and always a pleasure to have a chat with you. And I hope this has helped anyone who's looking for a DJ, because Paul Allen is your man. So please make sure you find him, as he said, on Google. Type in DJ Paul Allen. He's on social medias as well, so make sure you look for him. It's been an absolute pleasure to do episode 2 again. Lovely to have Leo returning with his question of the week for the guests. You just never know what Leo's going to ask, and it'll be interesting to see who we have on next week's show. And I'm sure Leo will have another question for them as well. So guys, take care. I will see you all next week for episode 3. I think the shows are going to be every Wednesday now. That's what I'm going to planning to do. So I don't know how many we're going to have this first season of the Wedcast, but I'm looking somewhere between 4 to 6, possibly a few more. I do have lots of brilliant guests lined up, so please stay tuned, and I'll see you all next week. Take care, guys. Stay safe.